Everyone, welcome back. This is episode 6. Kevin, how are you, mate? You good?
Very well, thank you.
Very well.
It was a different world. And I looked at Harry, the very first thing he said to me, we're going to need some new players for next year.
That was a good goal for us, so I was really pleased with that.
Perhaps we were expecting to. We got 11 goals that season for Norwich. Harry Redknapp, who's been, I'm just saying because I work for him, but a brilliant manager.
It's been a long time coming when we first spoke, a long time ago, and trying to get it all sorted. But yeah, everyone, welcome. Hopefully today Kevin will give a great insight into kind of your time from playing to at the top and managing abroad, managing here and players. And I'm looking here at your playing career, Norwich, Seattle Sounders, Man City, Southampton, Bournemouth. But talk me through that time at Norwich, because you're from West Ham, is it, in London? Or?
Yeah, my father played for West Ham for 16 years or so I was born and brought up, actually, 400 yards from Upton Park, as it was, yeah. So in the East End of London, we stayed there till I was about 13. And then my dad had finished playing, then got the manager's job at Bournemouth, so we moved down to Bournemouth.
Where were they at that
They
point?
were in Division, the old 4th Division, Division 2.
So like League 2?
Yeah, League 2 today. Just been relegated, actually, and my dad got the job. It was a different world. Bournemouth was
Culture change.
green, and there was golf courses. I'd never seen a golf course living in London, and playing football in the streets in between the cars, and then there was fields and it was amazing. We lived in a terraced house, and we had to end up having a house with a garden. It was a huge change in 1970 or something like that when it was, and that was really. From a footballing perspective, the start of it for me, I ended up having an apprenticeship at Bournemouth.
And then straight from there to Norwich?
Yeah, my dad. Again, that was sort of driven with my dad because he'd been at Bournemouth for 3 years or 4 years, and then went to Norwich, and I went with him, and then we had, I think, 7, 8 years at Norwich, which was a brilliant place. Look, slightly isolated. It still is now, sort of a couple of hours from. Seems like the rest of the world, but no, great. And from a footballing perspective, as a youngster trying to make a way in the game, it was a brilliant environment. We had lots of good youngsters at Norwich at that time who were all working alongside each other and feeding off of one another, and at that time working hard to try and get a foothold in the game.
Do you see a massive difference from, obviously, like you said, at that time, obviously it was, in the 70s at that point, you're in the academy, to now, when you look at, or when you've been in academies, or when you've been in clubs, do you see a massive difference from the work ethic from players when you were that age to players now, or do you think it's the same? Or
no,
times have changed.
Yeah, the times have changed. I think, we had, the conditions we had to work in. We had one pitch, which had to look after the first team, the reserves, the youth team. Literally one pitch.
You're not getting that now.
and the condition of the pitch was poor. We never really had a gym, and but no one did. So we never thought that we was hard done by because it was the norm.
Yeah, it wasn't normal.
Whereas today, when you look at some of the training grounds, and what the players are going to, what are glorified health clubs. They are.
Oh,
they're just
huge,
absolutely, and so they should be. Looked after, and the facilities they've got. And if you can't be dedicated under them conditions, then you've got no chance.
Yeah.
So, the players look after themselves.
Yeah, definitely.
The awareness, there's much more awareness than there was back in my day.
And I've got my notes here, and one thing that, from your whole career, player, manager, coach, everything, please tell me how in 1981 you ended up going across the other side of the pond to Seattle Sounders, and you were centre-half.
Yeah.
I've got here, played 30 games and scored 16 goals.
I know, it's great. It was.
Tell me how that works out. How's it all come about?
I was right back. I only got 16. Oh no, actually, I think the season before I went to America, I was playing right back at Norwich at the time, playing right back. I did take penalties for the team, but I got 11 goals that season for Norwich, and I think Justin Fashion, who bless him, was the leading goal scorer, our centre forward, and I was like right back and was our second top scorer at Norwich in what is today the Premier League. So that doesn't happen very often. So obviously very pleased about that. And then come the end of the season, what really happened was my father had left to go to Manchester City as manager. I think Kevin Reeves had been sold to Manchester City, and I think what Norwich didn't want is an exodus of players. My dad effectively taking three or four players to Man City. Now I knew that I could go there. I knew my dad would take me. He'd buy me. I knew I could go there, but it was not simple, and the club didn't want that. Didn't want to sell me there. So in effect, what had happened is. A good friend of mine played at Seattle the previous season, John Bryan, a really close friend of mine. I went out to see him, took a holiday the previous season and got to know the people in Seattle. Alan Hinton, who was the manager, remember Alan Hinton, left winger at Derby with the white boots and what have you. He was the manager out there. And somebody came up with an idea, an agent, there weren't many agents around them days, an agent came up with an idea, well, I think Alan Hinton might take you at Seattle. Why don't you go to Seattle? They'll buy you. But we've also got a deal in place for you at the end of that season to go back to Manchester City. That way it doesn't look like Norwich have sold you to Manchester City. So effectively that's what I did. So I went there, I think, in March. The season ended September. I missed hardly anything of the English season. And I stayed there for the entire season in America. And it was just the most brilliant experience. Loved it, got to see plenty of America. And football was very different, lots of great stadiums and brilliant environment, lots of good players. It was good then. It's gone through peaks and troughs in America. But it was fantastic. But that was really how it came about.
Do you think, like you said, it comes in peaks and troughs, especially with the MLS at the moment? And I remember a couple of years ago, players would, to finish their career, so to speak. Do you think the MLS will ever get to the same level as the European stage, or like? I'm not saying the big leagues. I'm just saying like.
I think it's getting there. I think it's getting there. I think it's and you're right. Are people sort of, generally speaking, apart from odd circumstances, perhaps like mine, people did seem to go out there to finish their career, but it's not like that now. No. People in the height of their career go to America, and I think it's very. You'd be wrong to underestimate it. It's a big league and an important. Probably the difference is in America, and here it's our national sport here. Nothing comes close to football. Where in America, you've got baseball, basketball, American football, hockey.
And then it's like fifth.
And then so it's, I think it's becoming extremely popular. A lot of girls play soccer in America. It's becoming more and more popular. They enjoy playing it. So I think it'll only grow. But it's as good as it's ever been right now, I think.
No, good. And then when you were playing out there, who was it? Any players that you played with that ever then came across to Europe, or?
No, there was a few players. I played Bruce Rioch, who was manager of Arsenal, played at Derby. He was a great player. Bruce Rioch, Alan Hudson. You remember Alan Hudson at Chelsea? Played for us. David Nish, a left back at Leicester City. We had lots of good players. There was Steve Daly, who'd gone for a British transfer record to Manchester City. Had gone out there. So lots of good players, and then played against. I played against George Best. Played against the Brazilian captain, the right back. I forget his name. I was lucky to play against some, good players. It might have been the back end of their career, but it's a fantastic experience.
Yeah, and obviously then you went to Man City. Was your dad there the whole time you were there?
No, he left. I had a season under Billy McNeil after my father left. But when I initially went there, my dad was a manager there. Great club, absolutely wonderful club. Going through a difficult time there. We started really well, and then we never, had to sold Trevor Francis, who was fantastic, and I think money became a bit of an issue. And
not the Man City it is today.
not the Man City is today. But, you know, Man City is a... go back there and watch them in a different stadium, different everything, you know, but see the same people, the same people are working there, and it was a great club, and it still is a great club.
Still is. And then you then went to Southampton and then Bournemouth, and you kind of down south at that point. What league was Southampton in at the time, and what
Southampton
made the
had
jump to Bournemouth?
Southampton had just finished second in the league. They'd had a magnificent year under Laurie and done so well, and then they'd started the season really badly, and I don't think they'd got a win in their first half a dozen games or something like that. I was looking for, you know, it weren't working out for me, and I think Billy McNeil was happy to let me go, and it happened. So,
was he honest about that?
Yeah, he was good as gold.
You see a lot of...
No, he was great.
Obviously, behind closed doors, obviously, and the fans and people that are watching obviously might not know what goes on, and you hear stories of like with the Ozil situation, what's happening with that. Was it very much, you're not playing, you can go? Was he honest about that? And obviously, moving in when you went to turn into your managerial career, has that kind of changed with yourself?
Yeah,
honesty.
Yeah, I mean, it's moving, transfers, going from club to club is fundamental part of football. You know, whether you want to move, and if both parties are happy, then that's fine. It's absolutely part of the game, and it suited everybody that I moved. I was happy, the club was happy, hopefully Southampton were happy. So I went there, I think about 6 weeks after the season started, not long after the season started. It was a really family-run club. You know, Laurie at that stage run the club from top to bottom. Had a really great feel about it. We had a good season. I think we ended up finishing in Europe on the last day of the year, the last day of the season. The Dell was a very difficult place for any. You know, I'd played at the Dell myself for other teams, and it was a very hard place to go and play. Teams found it difficult coming there. A fantastic experience. We'd ended up going to Southampton. Had a good time there. I had a stuttering start, and we ended up having a good season and finishing in Europe, which was brilliant.
Yeah.
But I remember driving home one day in the summer, looking forward to playing in Europe the following season, and listening to the whole Heysel Stadium tragedy unravel. And of course, all the English teams got thrown out of Europe. That was the end of that for a number of years. So that was a real disappointment.
What does everyone, like, obviously you hear there's such a big thing that obviously happened. Did that affect maybe yourself and all like players in the dressing room? Like, you've worked so hard for something at that time and some big steps to get into Europe, and then bang, you're not in it. Did that affect a lot of players, or did a lot of players then think, I can move and play in Europe, or play for a bigger team?
No one could play in Europe, so it doesn't matter what team you played for, you couldn't play in Europe, in England. So, you know, we had, in them days, had no not really. I know I'd played abroad, no aspirations to go and play abroad so you could play in Europe. We just got on with it. If the truth of the matter, we just got on with it. It was a big disappointment, but then start of next season, you roll your sleeves up and you go again. But for a period of time, obviously, we never had the lure of European football.
And then after that, was that following season, obviously finding out about you couldn't play in Europe, obviously at England club, sorry. You went to Bournemouth that summer, or was it summer after?
No. That was 1985 or 86, 85, the Heysel Stadium, and I stayed at Norwich, I think, till 88, 89, so about 4 or 5 years there. And I was 32 or something at the time then. And Harry Redknapp was the manager of Bournemouth. I knew Harry really well. You know, going back as a very young boy when he was at West Ham.
West Ham, yeah.
And he showed an interest in taking me down to Bournemouth. And, it was an easy move for me. I could have stayed at Southampton, but I decided to move, and I had 3 or 4 years there, and it was great. He was great to work with, great to work for. I didn't need to move. It was down the road for me at the back end of my career.
Oh, good. And then, obviously taking all that consideration in, obviously like the players you played with, the coaches you coached, your dad obviously was a manager. At what point during that whole career did you ever think, yeah, coaching is for me, managing is the thing for me, or did you just retire and then was like, right, what do I do next? Or when was the flipping point where you knew you were gonna go into coaching?
I sort of if my father was obviously coach and manager, and it was in our it's sort of in our blood a little bit. So I was keen to do that, but you need to be given an opportunity. I was coming to the end of my career. I ended up, believe it or not, I ended up running a transport cafe in Southampton, right at the very back end of my career. Long story how we got to do it, but anyway, I ended up having it was on an industrial estate in Southampton. A guy who I'd worked with for a period of time, been very good to me, and helped me set up with a transport cafe. Now, football, relatively speaking, isn't hard work, but I certainly learned what hard work was when I had that early mornings. And so I ran that for a couple of years, right at the back end of my football career. And I would have wanted to get into coaching, but you need to be given the opportunity. And I'll always remember I was actually at the races one day, and I bumped into Alan Ball, who I knew Alan. Yeah. I bumped into him, and Alan had just been made manager of Man City, and he said to me while I was at the race, he said to me, "How do you fancy being one of my coaches at Man City?" I said, "Well, I'd love it." He said, "Leave it with me." Anyway, I went home and I never heard anything. It seemed like a long time, probably only a couple of weeks. And I thought that was the end of that. Anyway, he gave me a call, and within 2 days I was reserve team coach at Man City. So, and that was it. That was just, my first steps into coaching. Was fantastic of him. He's a fantastic man, was a fantastic man. But that what a whirlwind that was. Obviously a club I knew very well. I knew Alan very well. I knew Francis Lee, who was the chairman, very well. But it didn't prevent me from ultimately losing my job there. I had under Alan, I think Alan had been there at the back end of that season, and then he departed, I think 3 games into the season, Alan did. After a defeat at Stoke City, I'll never forget, he lost his job, and I'd just gone there in the summer.
Did you know then that you would be?
Well, I didn't. I was taking the reserve. I didn't know what my fate would be. Yeah. To be truthful, I had no idea. Just keep your head down and see what happened. And then they brought in Steve Coppell. Mm-hmm. Steve Coppell come in and took the job. 6 weeks later, for one reason or another, Steve decided it wasn't for him, and so he resigned. His assistant was Phil Neal, fantastic footballer at Liverpool. He took over on a temporary basis, and I don't know, forget how long he lasted, a matter of weeks. And then it went back to Tony Book and Asa Hartford, who had stayed at the club, Man City legends, brilliant. And then they appointed Frank Clark. So we'd had like 5 managers in the space of 2 months. This is by October. Yeah. Frank Clark was installed as manager, and I just sort of kept my head down. And but at the end of the season, Frank said to me, I'm going to go in a different direction, so he let me go. So I'd lasted effectively 1 season there, and that was the end of that. But it is, it just shows you the ruthless nature, not necessarily anything that I will have done or not done. Yeah. But so that was the end of for me at Man City.
Gosh, and then seeing all of that obviously come to fruition. Obviously, managers last in 2 weeks, 6 weeks, and in that 3-month bubble, we've had God knows how many managers. Why do you think that was? Do you think it was the club? It was just run poorly, or they just got the wrong people in, or the people didn't realise what they were getting themselves into, or? Well,
I think I can only think from Alan's point of view, it was results. It didn't. I don't think I mean, how terrible does it sound? I don't think they got a win in the first 3 games, and they were in what is today the Championship, so they've been expecting to scoot up.
Yeah.
You know, now we know that, you know, the club going down and going shit is not as easy as that. You know, you look at lots of clubs who have suffered it. There's a big potential hangover, so it's very difficult. But the expectation was there, and he didn't get the result, so he lost his. Steve Coppell leaving was nothing to do with that was Steve Coppell wanting to leave. So, you know, and the club wanted Steve. They then passed it over to Phil. I mean, you know, Phil wouldn't have been probably their choice initially. Give him an opportunity, whether it didn't work out for him. I just think it was different circumstances. But it you know, actually the game is much crazier now than it was then, with the demand for results.
And then you were left, obviously at that time. What do you think after, obviously you've been told you can leave Man City now? At what point, obviously you've left that, do you think, I'm going to get another job? Did you enjoy it? Did you not? I don't know.
I didn't enjoy. You know, the fact I was out, and I had no idea, you know, where my next job was going to come. Yeah. I'm you know, in my 30s. I had no idea where my next job was going to come, whether it be in football and starting a new career. And I can't exactly remember how it came about, but when I was living in Manchester, we'd moved. You know, obviously I'd kept my house in Southampton. Don't know why we didn't sell it, but we didn't. We rented it out. We moved to Manchester. Manchester I knew because obviously I played there, but renting a house in Manchester, my wife and my children moved up there. And I ended up having an interview for the job at Stafford Rangers, who was in one league below the conference, I think it was then. And brilliant people. Yeah. Brilliant people, but completely different. You go in, I would end up getting the manager's job there for a year. You've got to run the club, you've got to organise the training, you've got to work in the shop, you've got to sell tickets, you've got a budget, a strict budget that you've got to work to. You train. We wasn't full time. We trained twice a week, and then played on Saturday. So everyone would turn up for training or expected to turn up for training on Tuesday and Thursday. You'd set out your plans for training, and then your centre half didn't turn up. He was at work or a problem at home, and I'd get so aggravated. Well, I'm not going to play him on Saturday if he can't turn up for training. But you very quickly realise that you've got to be more understanding, because it happens all the. That's how it was for sort of non-league football in them days. You just got to give a bit. They don't do it on purpose. They weren't being difficult by not coming, and a lot more tolerant. And I had to learn that. But it was brilliant, a brilliant experience for me. I had a year doing that, and luckily for me, really luckily for me, at the back end of that season, I got a phone call from Alan Ball again, who'd just been made manager at Portsmouth, said, did I want to come back and work for him at Portsmouth, which was fantastic because I could go back. I'd kept my house in Southampton, and that was me back in my house, and I was sort of back up and running again in a league club, great club with great people. And you know, Stafford was fantastic.
It's just different.
Yeah, very different.
And then, how long was it you were at Portsmouth for with Alan then?
I think I've worked at Portsmouth about 4 times or 5 times now. I worked with Alan, and then then Alan left, and then I left. I ended up doing a bit of scouting for Harry at West Ham. Mm-hmm. And Harry left West Ham, and Harry got the job at Portsmouth, and he took me back to Portsmouth. Brilliant time in the Championship. Changed the team completely changed the team. You know, that's a difficult task to get everyone to gel in the space of one summer, a whole new group of players. But he did, and that was a fantastic season. Ended up getting promotion with Harry, Jim Smith. It was marvellous.
If you could, obviously, people watching this, I think a lot of people will know you with your time with Harry across your whole career, and obviously, like you said, signing you and stuff. If you could describe Harry in one word, what would it be? As a manager and as a coach, what would you, if you could name one word about him, what would you say?
I would say passionate or enthusiastic. I mean, Harry's he won't 70 but Harry's got energy, and what I always think that you cannot underestimate the demands of being a manager, the demands of the physical demands. If you haven't got high energy levels, you're going to find it difficult. And Harry has got amazing energy levels. Honestly, he has. He'll go drive the length of the country to watch a football match, go to bed and be up, never missed a training session, out every day, did his job. He had a huge desire.
What is that, just to win, or is that just to every single chance he's got in football to just make
to be successful? Has a huge desire.
And when you're at Portsmouth, obviously now where Portsmouth are now to where they were at the time, what's that like for you as a coach and obviously as a manager as well, going into a club of that stature, and you're in there for the first training session and you're talking to the players? Do you know from then what players are going to be like, or do you know by just like the first training session, right, he's going, or is it you give him a bit more time?
Yeah, I mean, it would be the managers. Maybe there would be players who were going that I knew that were leaving, but it was principally my job. Treat everybody the same, regardless of who they are and what they are, and try and get the best out of them when you're taking the training. But you do get to understand that everybody's different. People have all got their little idiosyncrasies, and we had the likes of Paul Merson, who was just a maverick and a fantastic player, but he had a short fuse. He could walk off the pitch if he didn't like what was going on, and you couldn't, and you think, well, what am I going to do now? He's walked off, but you just have, just get on with it, and actually, next day he was fine, and it was the way they are, and everybody's different, and you need to, if you can, in your own way, try and, understand how people, what works for people and what don't work for people, and do your best to get the best out of them.
Do you think a lot of success that you had at Portsmouth at that time, because you had the likes of Merce and those big characters, do you think that helped, made a massive difference, comparison to the other players around you? Yeah,
it would. Yeah, they were. Paul Merson could be quirky, but Paul Merson really wanted he really wanted a win. He was a winner. Make no mistake. And Harry had put together a brilliant dressing room. They had got really good players. Shaka Hislop, a goalkeeper from West Ham. I could name them all. People who wanted to do well. I hadn't come down to Portsmouth for anything other than to be successful. And Paul Merson would say now that he had marvellous years at Arsenal, but no happier time than his period at Portsmouth. It was brilliant. Harry had a great dressing room, and they all wanted to do well, and they all fed off of each other. And if the players didn't like what they were seeing from other players, then they would let them know. They, to a large degree, policed themselves, and probably many good teams have got that. I think it's massively important. Look at it the other way. I've been in dressing rooms that are not good dressing rooms, and it's hard to be successful.
And I was about to say that. Do you think, looking at all the teams that are whatever level, League Two clubs that get promoted, Championship clubs that get promoted, cup runs, do you look at those and even if you don't know anything about the club, that they've got some characters in there, or they've got some leaders in there, they've got a bit about them that says that's why they're doing it?
I think if you look, even when you have good spells or a good run, you think about the mindset of the dressing room and the player at that time. They're all focused. They're all they're all completely in tune with one another, and just thinking of what's ahead of them. When you have a good spell, when you have a good you've won 6 matches on the trot. If you win it, and you can see it. They've all got that. And when you've had a great season, it's because they're all completely focused. The players are all completely driven. It's a good dressing room. There's no dissenting voices. I think it's essential. I don't probably think you can't be a fragmented group and be successful.
And obviously from Portsmouth, you and Harry both went to Southampton.
Yeah.
And then short time you went to Newcastle at Southampton. Is that right? Or
yeah.
Was that at the end of that?
I went to. I went to from Portsmouth to Southampton with Harry, and then we were there a year. I weren't there that long. Unfortunately, couldn't keep Southampton up, which was, is and still is a huge disappointment on the last day of the season. So that was huge, really disappointment. But we had so many situations where one goal would have just turned it around for us, but it wasn't to be. So it remains a big disappointment. And anyway, we end up going back. Milan Mandaric wanted Harry to go back to Portsmouth because they was in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Harry decided he'd go back. There was no place for me at Southampton then, so I couldn't stay. So Harry wanted me to go back with him, and I did. And then come the end of that season, Harry managed to keep Portsmouth up, which was fantastic. And I just had the opportunity to go to Newcastle with Glenn Roeder, who I'd worked with for a short time at West Ham after Harry had left. And he asked me to go up there with him, and which I did. It didn't last for long for different reasons up there, but what a club, what a club. And honestly, one of the biggest clubs in the world in terms of its face. Huge, the support they get, I've never been to a more passionate footballing place in the world. Fantastic. But unfortunately, it didn't last very long. And then I trotted back home, and a little while later I managed to get the job at Bournemouth.
Just talking on Newcastle quickly there, because I'm just thinking from when I started watching football from that kind of time, and I remember Newcastle, I remember Glenn Roeder. I don't know why, there's something about him that just, I looked at him and I was like, you scare the hell out of me. Or is it completely different? Or did he have that streak in him in training, if you're not doing it, he'll lose it and then 2 seconds?
No, he wasn't that kind of guy, really.
Yeah.
Nice guy, Glenn. Not really. Wouldn't be, football passionate. Knows the game. He would know. Wouldn't be a fearsome type of character like you could.
I don't know why he just looks like on the TV.
Or he never come across to me that way.
Yeah.
You asked what the two of the players might think. But no, I think it was a person you could talk to, not a person to. That's the way it came across to me.
Mm. And then you think going into your time at Bournemouth, obviously, did that come about? Was their position open, and then it came to your attention, or? Yeah,
Sean O'Driscoll. Obviously, I was living in Southampton. Back in Southampton at that stage, Sean O'Driscoll, who I played with at Bournemouth at the back end, been manager and done just an amazing job for years and years and years. Decided that he needed to change, so he left. So the job became available, and I put my name down. Obviously, somebody who'd played there. Yeah. I put my name down and had an interview, and eventually got the job and had a couple of years there.
And that was at a very different Bournemouth to what we see today. How, obviously everyone's seen the documentary and stuff around obviously that time, how hard actually was it on a day-to-day basis knowing whatever's going on upstairs, but you've still got to carry on? How hard is that as a coach and as a manager, and did you have issues with the people above?
Certainly, we didn't have money.
Right.
But when I first went to the club, we didn't. It wasn't a place where I'm thinking that we've got huge financial problems. Wasn't aware that we was in that kind of situation. We were where we were. That they weren't in a great place. But generally speaking, when you take a job, the club's not in a great place. That's the reason why. Anyway, we managed to stay up that season, and then making plans for the following year. Then it became evident that the club was in a bit of trouble, and midway through the season, the club went into administration, and we had a 10-point deduction, and that was when it became really difficult.
And at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, was Eddie Howe, he was in your coaching staff at that time?
Yeah, Eddie was had bad knee, had a really bad knee, and then he was such a great guy, and he was struggling to train, he was struggling to play, didn't feel like he could do himself justice, and I knew he was thinking to himself, I don't want to, it's all right for me to take my money as a player, but I can't play it, not anything like what I want to, and I'm going to have to call it a day. I think I might have to call it a day. And I asked, because I knew he was really conscientious, deep thinker, whether he'd like to come on the coaching side, and he jumped at it straight away, and so he hung up his boots and come on.
Was that because you saw something in him? Or?
Yeah.
And to obviously young coaches out there and people that obviously want to try and make it in there, what was that? What exactly did you see in him that you were like, no, you can, I can see something in you? And obviously from what he's done now, obviously with his time at Bournemouth and his time at Burnley, could you see that you could see that at the time? You could see, he can make it at the level.
I
know it's hard. But
no one was looking too far ahead. Eddie was an intelligent footballer. He was a really intelligent footballer. Could read the game, so you knew he knew the game. I knew he was a deep thinker about the game. He was quiet, but so I thought he had all the attributes to coach. And soon after he came on the coaching side, and I'd watch him do some work with players, you could see straight away that he, then the players responded to him as well. So he knew what he was doing. That was pretty evident. So it really worked for him, and it really worked for me to have him on board.
And your time, obviously, at Bournemouth, obviously, when it came to an end in 2008, at the end of the season, you then reignite your relationship with Harry. And from what a lot of people will know of your career, your time at Spurs. Was it an easy yes, or was it a bit of a struggle, or to go from obviously manager?
Oh no, it wasn't a problem. I enjoyed being manager, and but I love being, I love working alongside Harry. Love working for Harry. I loved it. Going to Tottenham was, as you can imagine, when it was there was no decision to make. That was just a brilliant opportunity, and 4 years that was fantastic. The club was struggling again a little bit, and ended up.
That was after Juan de Ramos, wasn't it? Harry took over. I think it must be like 12th or 16th at the time.
They were having a difficult time, and Daniel Levy thought the time was right to make a change. Harry come on board, and it was just brilliant. And then we finished in Europe, and then we got the Champions League twice, and it was just a most amazing time. A big club, a great club, with some fantastic players.
And what's he actually like? Obviously, everyone's seen a lot of Daniel on the Tottenham till on Amazon, on their documentary. Is he what he portrays on there? Is he definitely is a businessman?
Yeah, definitely a businessman.
And do you think there's a lot of things that people don't see behind the scenes that how well he's done for the club. Some people look at the time, he didn't give Poch the money, didn't do this, that.
Oh, he's obviously done. If you look at where Tottenham are now, they're proper big club, got the best stadium, got the best training ground, got everything in place. The one thing they haven't got and have been unable to get is a trophy since 2008.
I was going to say.
We now got a trophy, but it was the year before, I think they won the League Cup as it was then, but they hadn't. We managed to get the final and did okay, got beat to Manchester, but nobody's been able to pick up a trophy, and that's in the end of the day, that's what you're in football for, and that's the reason why he's employed Jose Mourinho in order to bring some silverware. But, he's done I never had hardly anything to do with Daniel Levy, but he run the club, amazingly over the years, and properly, and just a brilliant time that I'll never forget being there.
And there's another person to your Three Stooges, as I like to call you, obviously Joe. And I have to talk about it. I will try and put a picture of it that everyone's famous for seeing in the San Siro, that nice big square off with Gattuso. What do you know this is happening at the time when the game's going on, or did it just happen out of nothing? Or because I remember watching it and I'm thinking, bloody hell, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah, I knew that. Joe is. I played with Joe at Southampton.
Yeah.
A fantastic family man. What a proper person. You could have your life on him, Joe, but won't stand any nonsense. Stand his court. Doesn't matter who you are. And I think he'd already been moaning at Gattuso about, or the referee had an argument with Gattuso right near to where the dugouts were, and Joe was shouting. And anyway, at the end of the game, it all went off. You know what I mean? Joe, I just stood back. Joe is absolutely capable of looking after himself.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be backing anyone against Joe. Don't worry about that. And I was stunned. I couldn't believe it when it was something and nothing.
Yeah.
But he ended up. I think he ended up getting banned from the dressing room for the next. Yeah, he did, from the dressing room for our next game, which ended up being Real Madrid in the quarterfinals.
Yeah.
So it was. It's funny how the dynamics of a dressing room work. Joe wasn't like a huge talk, but he wasn't in the dressing room, and we missed him. He couldn't be out. He was up in the stand, and we missed him.
That's something that's missing.
We missed him. We did, yeah.
And obviously during that time, also, was that the same season you were also at the San Siro when Bale scored that hat-trick?
Yeah.
Was that the same season? Let's just talk a bit.
Yeah.
Did you, obviously again, I'm not saying you're a mind reader, but did you know what you were getting yourself into when Bale was at the club? Could you tell that, what a player?
He was evolving.
Yeah.
He was evolving, but that was probably what really... what sprung him to the front. That was really what did it for him. We were in all sorts. We'd had the goalkeeper sent off, down to 10 men, 3-0 down and 4-0 down at half time.
4-0, yeah.
Harry didn't know what to say for the best at half time. Anyway, 4-1, 4-2, 4-3. They couldn't handle him. They couldn't handle him.
Well, bearing in mind he's taken on probably one of the best right backs.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
In Mycon.
Yeah.
And I saw something with Harry, I think it was on Sky Sports the other day, and he was saying if he ended up playing at left back for the whole of his career, he would have been the best left back in the world.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
And could you just see that he just, when he was in training, and then all of a sudden, obviously that game, and then all of a sudden it's just goal after goal after goal, and he's transitioned from a left back where, wasn't it a hoodoo that every single time he played, Spurs didn't win or something?
Yeah, when we first went to Tottenham, it wasn't his fault, but and so I think it ends up weighing heavy on you, or it maybe weighed heavy on him. Anyway, got over that little barrier and ended up winning. It was a great relief for him, and I think what happened was, Luka Modric, who'd always had played off the left-hand side. There was a difference of opinion. When we went there, he'd played on the left-hand side, and could he play in the middle of the park? We wanted to play. We ultimately played sort of 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1 with a striker and a number 10, and ended up playing Gareth Bale one side and Aaron Lennon the other. Can he cope in? It wasn't the biggest. Can he? I mean, it's ridiculous to even contemplate it now. So they played him off the left-hand side and two stronger ones in the middle of the park. Anyway, Harry put him in the middle of the park, Luka Modric, and pushed Gareth Bale higher in front of Benoit Cotta, and it worked. He's...
Rest is history.
How can we think that you can't play Luka Modric in the midfield? And he was just awesome, and Gareth Bale was awesome, and that was the first game that really pushed him to the front. If we'd have carried on for another 10 minutes... we'd have beaten them. We'd have beaten them. They couldn't handle it. The most surprising element of that, because that was at the group stages, so we played Inter Milan at home and then away, and then we had to play Inter Milan at home. And Rafa Benitez was the manager of them at the time. And when we played them at home, Maicon was right back again. Gareth Bale was up the left-hand side again, and we're thinking really quickly in the game, he's going to have to give Maicon a bit of protection here. Somebody up the right-hand side to help up and double up. But he never did, and he ripped him apart at home again. He ripped him apart. And we ended up beating him at home. Never forget that. And Gareth went on and on and on.
And you talk about Modric and obviously when the play was when you came, and then obviously the player he's ended up still become. Why... What more could that team have done, do you think? Do you think given a bit more maybe time, given a bit more maybe money?
I think Harry believes that in the last transfer window that he had, which would probably been January 2012 or something like that, when we were doing really well. I think we were second or something. We were doing really well. If we'd have, I say gone for it. If we might have made a real good fist of things, whether we would, whether not, I don't know. But we didn't deal in the market. I think like Harry would have liked to have dealt in the market. I'm not saying that was the reason why we fell away, but perhaps it didn't help. And then I think what ended up killing us is that we ended up finishing fourth in the league, which is a Champions League spot. But as the rules were then, Chelsea were in the final, and if Chelsea won, that meant only we couldn't the fourth spot. So we ended up, and I never forget watching I don't wish bad on any of the English team, but I wanted Bayern Munich to win that night, and we knew, pretty much knew what would happen. If Chelsea won that game, pretty much knew what the consequences would be. And sure enough, I think Bayern Munich ended up taking the lead in the 80-something minute and thinking, thank goodness for that. And then they equalised with Drogba, and then they were one down in penalties and ended up overtaking. It was horrendous from a personal point, horrendous, because I knew, not because I wished harm on Chelsea particularly, but on that night I knew what had happened. And sure enough, in the summer, we departed Tottenham, which was an end of a fantastic time.
Yeah, and obviously, just talking a bit on Tottenham, and especially if you say to people, those players at Portsmouth, at Tottenham, a bit of QPR, I can name a couple, your Cranshaws, your Crouches, your Defoes, and you spoke about it a bit before, about that group environment. Is that a major reason why, obviously when you were with Harry, those players, do you think he took most places he went? Because to have that environment, and those players knew that environment, and he thought, well, if we can create that everywhere we go, we can still be successful.
Yeah,
people have always said, like, oh, why
he wanted good. Harry knew the good, the good sorts, the good player. Harry, he'd been around the game for such a long time. He knew the good character. you know, a lot you inherited at Tottenham, and some you brought in, and you knew how important it was. You know, we had Tottenham was, you know, full of good players, but full of proper footballers, proper characters, good, wanted to win, you know, enjoyed it all, but, you know, only were single-minded. And, you know, Harry, before that, took that into, you know, he'd bought Tim Sherwood. Wow, he was a winner. I mean, what about me? They all were. What a winner. Bought Teddy Sheringham at the back end of his career. Wasn't interested in anything other than winning. You know, was not coming down here for the back end of his career. He wanted to win. It was driven. And they were all very much like that. He bought, relatively unknown, took a guy from Wigan called Ariane Dazou, who was a centre half, and I think was playing in Division 1 at that time, really, and plucked him out of from Wigan's team. Was amazing for Portsmouth. Was fantastic, and the most dedicated player. Brilliant, and had 4 years, however long. Brilliant, and just a great character. So Harry knew the importance of having the right type of people around him and in the dressing room.
And obviously, you spoke about, obviously at the time we finished at Spurs now, and you'd done a stint at QPR with Harry, and then obviously Harry left, and you were then with Chris Ramsey. What is QPR? Obviously, around that time, QPR have always been famous for the owners and what the club does. What was the project at QPR from the owner? Because obviously everyone says that you pump this money in. And
I think the owner, obviously, Tony Fernandez, really, wanted West London club attractive to players, and wanted a team that could do well, but I suppose throwing a lot of money at it didn't necessarily work, certainly not straight away, and it didn't. So Harry came in after it didn't work for Mark Hughes, and I think we couldn't keep them up because they was in trouble. Anyway, managed to galvanise them and got promotion the following season out the Championship, which was again a roller coaster. Harry had got Rob Green in goal, great character. Got Richard Dunn. What a brilliant Nedum Manura, brilliant characters who ultimately we had to lean on very heavily to get us over the line. We had a sometimes difficult period.